So the prospect of a better life brought my family from Indonesia to Sydney, to Jakarta, to Western Australia. Also the lovely outdoor weather that we have here, so that we could raise our family, and the very affordability of housing was what brought my family to Western Australia. My mum and dad moved to Sydney in 1977 with my 6-month-old brother, and I was born in 1978. They moved to Sydney for the prospect of a better life in Australia, because there's really wonderful weather here and also an outdoor lifestyle, but also because housing back in 1978 was a lot more affordable, so people could own their own homes much more easily than in Indonesia, where families tend to live with their parents and have their children in that same home, and very uncommonly purchase their own housing. The reasons that keep us in Western Australia are primarily the wonderful outdoor weather, which is wonderful for us to raise our children in. Definitely the close proximity to Indonesia, because we go back and visit as often as we possibly can. Also the prospect of a really good life here. So some of the cultural practices that I maintain in my daily life include using honorific titles. So for example, when we're addressing people who are older or younger than us, it's not just by their first name. There's usually a title before, so older sister, older brother, younger sister. Also, we remove our shoes before we enter the home. We also eat using our right hand, and quite often we'll eat meals using our hands rather than using utensils. In terms of traditions, it's really common for Indonesians to actually eat together, and rather than sitting at the dinner table, quite often we might just eat on the floor on a mat. We follow, which is Indonesian but it's also religious, we follow the Eid festival, and one of those traditions is actually going from home to home and visiting family and friends and seeking, forgiveness for any wrongdoings of the prior year. And we visit usually the oldest, and then in order of the oldest to the youngest of the family members who we live near. Or even though we're here in Australia, we still follow the Eid. So there's Ramadan fasting followed by Eid al-Fitri, which is very much, I guess, in Indonesia, faith and religion are very deeply ingrained. So we have the Muslim faith, and then we have Christianity and Catholicism, Hinduism and Buddhism, and all of those festivals are celebrated at a national level in Indonesia. And so wherever you move from Indonesia, most often people will carry on those traditions wherever they live in the world. I speak Indonesian on a daily basis at work, at home, and at my children's school with my parents, my family and my friends. We speak face-to-face Indonesian, but I also have family who live overseas, so we speak Indonesian over social media. I speak English, I guess, more frequently because I'm here in Australia. I speak it more, I guess, faster because that's the way that my brain works. So comparatively, my Indonesian interpretation takes a while conversationally and also written. I studied in an Indonesian school just for the year. So my dad, I guess, explaining the reason why he moved to Australia was because he wanted to find a better life here, but he also really missed Indonesia. So we moved back for a year to be immersed in the culture, to develop stronger relationships with our relatives, but also to pick up on the language. So I did learn to speak Bahasa very fluently, both written and verbally, while I was there, but because I don't use it every single day, it's a little bit rusty. I've definitely noticed a change in Western society's attitude towards Indonesians, not only here in Western Australia, but also growing up in Sydney. I find that more and more people are interested in visiting, for example, Bali in Indonesia, and so travelling there they learn a bit more about their culture, more about the food, more about the traditions, and I think it's increased the favourability towards Indonesians. I don't feel, as an Indonesian Australian living here, I don't feel like I'm so foreign. I feel that there's a commonality and also an empathy. I feel particularly that attitudes towards Indonesians it's very much influenced by what's reported on in the news. If there's, for example, a tragedy, for example, the tsunami that happened there's a lot of empathy towards Indonesia. But when there's something considered to be an injustice, so for example, when Schapelle Corby was imprisoned for, let's call it, alleged drug trafficking, there was a lot of animosity towards Indonesia and Indonesians. So I do find that there's quite a strong influence of how the news reports what's happening and the attitudes that Western Australians have towards Indonesia and Indonesians.